Greetings and welcome to another episode of Q Points Podcast. I'm DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is J. Ray, sometimes known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. And Sir Daniel, what's interesting about our leadership is it's a very interesting history between how they have been represented in Black music and Black culture over the years. And it's time we talk about it.
And J. Ray, we just have to hold that. We have to hold that as a community. And this episode, we're going to unpack what we've done to kind of incubate this person and incubate the clout that he has, as it were, with respect to once New York City to now a whole country and all across the world. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. And it just has to be said that growing up in the 80s, wealth was something that became definitely on the top of everybody's mind. They call the 80s the me era because the 80s was about accumulation, was about greed. Everything we saw in our media reflected that, from our television shows like Dynasty, the Colbys, Falcon Crest, Dallas, to the television shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, where wealth was just put in our faces and say, see this, this is what we have and you don't. There's a very concrete line, a gold line, if you will, that was drawn in the sand of the world of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And so that was pushed in our faces. And when you were a victim or a person living under the circumstances of Reaganomics, like we were, if you were living in cities that were deeply impacted by the quote unquote trickle down effect that the economics was supposed to have, and the crack era, with places like New York City and beyond, every major city that had a lot of Black people in it, you saw the direct effects. Or you saw the difference of the haves and the have-nots. It was so plain to go from your neighborhood to in just one train ride to see how the other half was living, and that they were living in opulence. And growing up in the 80s, J. Ray, I'll never forget, there was a very distinct moment in time where being a young Black man was literally personified by a term called wilding.
Okay.
And yes, we were reduced to a term called wilding, and that if you were a young Black man in this particular era, space, and time of an incident that really had the city in a chokehold, you were placed under a microscope. No matter what your values were, no matter what kind of upbringing you had, you were placed under a microscope and grouped because of a quote unquote event that happened in Central Park in New York City in 1989.
1889, yep.
1989, where a woman was attacked and viciously raped, and the whole city was just under siege by this whole. The police were looking for these boogeymen that were Black young men, and rounding them up and arresting 5 young men at one point. And not only the trial by jury took place, but the trial of the public took place. Even amongst us, J. Ray, in the Black community, I remember distinctly hearing, these young people from other Black people, it's these young people and the music that they're listening to. And that's why we don't want you associating with those kinds of young Black people. You don't need to listen to that kind of music, because as Black people trying to live in this country and operating under respectability politics, those are the things you heard growing up about those 5 young men. And fast forward to modern times, we know, J.
Yeah.
Ray, that that was not the truth. That was
Right.
not the whole truth. And that the reason why someone like a Donald Trump can has such a big platform and becomes the personification of wealth and access and power
Mhm.
is because as black people in this country, we have always been made to feel like white is right.
Mhm.
The white man's ice is always colder. Everything that they have is nicer because under the conditions that we were put under, it absolutely was.
Yep.
It was absolutely so. Those kinds of things have a deep psychological effect on generations of
Yep.
us.
Yep.
I mean, to the way we, again, respectability politics, to the way we, you've made it if you've accumulated this, if you've gotten this car, you've gotten this house, you got these appliances in your kitchen,
Yeah.
you have made it, or you have made it because you have reached some type of assimilation to white America because white America becomes the standard or
Yep.
had become the standard.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we know this as growing up in the 1980s, we are watching these cultural shifts take place, right? So you have the Reaganomics, you have the crack era, you have HIV, you have all of these things that are like mass incarceration, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are decimating our communities. And at the same time, you have the rise of music that is lifting black folks from these very same communities out of those communities and ascending them closer to that model that you're talking about, right? So it is allowing black folks, we're talking about hip hop specifically. One, it's giving young black people, particularly young black men and young black women, visibility. It's
Mm-hmm.
giving them access to money, more money than many of them have ever had, right?
Right.
And it is allowing these folks to ascend and, in some cases, assimilate, right, into
Yes.
this world that you have laid out for us. And so these things are all happening at the same time. But and not even but by 1989, Donald Trump has moved from a local kind of tri-state figure, like a New York figure that people knew, because Trump Tower was built and existed from the early 1980s, right? So Trump's name
Yes.
was very synonymous with real estate, which has a racist history, right? So y'all can look up
Talk about
that
it. Yep.
history. I think that's really important, right?
Specifically, his family too. His
Specifically
father.
his family. Exactly. So that is a very important history, right? So that's already coming. And by 1989, Trump, the character, I'm not talking about the person at this point, but kind of the character of, or the image of what that name represents becomes its
Mm-hmm.
own thing. But I want to bring it back to um uh uh May 1st of 1989, because I think this is a really important moment because there are two things happening at the exact same time. So May 1st, 1989, Donald Trump, in a signed ad, took out ads in four major New York newspapers. So the New York Times, the New York Times, the New York Daily News, the New York Post, and the New York Newsday. Not as familiar with that one. I'm not sure if the New York Newsday is still around. But anyway, this ad, the headline of the ad was "Bring back the death penalty, bring back our police." And there was a letter signed by Donald Trump, which was before the trial of the young men, the Exonerated Five, right? So I'm going to name their names because I think that's really important. Antron
Very important.
McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salaam, Raymond Santana, Corey Wise, right? Let's name these brothers' names. And This is before the trial. So these, of course, these young men end up being convicted. We know now that was a lie. They were convicted incorrectly, and they are considered the Exonerated Five. But on May 1st, 1989, this ad comes out. We'll make sure that we link it in the description. And that's in May 1st of 89. At the same time in 1989, right? Donald Trump's name starts to show up in music, right? Because by then, this figure has now started to transition to a symbol, a unit of measure in many ways of opulence, of money, of all of those things. And so in 1989, we have the Fat Boys mentioning Donald Trump, actually an early mention of Donald Trump as a unit of measure. We have the Beastie Boys on their Paul's Boutique album has created a fictional character called Donald Tramp, who is a person experiencing homelessness, and they're kind of telling this story, but it's hearkening back to Donald Trump. And at the same time, Prince is writing a record. So the Time is planning to release a record that never comes out. It's called Corporate World. And Prince writes this song called Donald Trump Black Version. Donald Trump Black Version, written by Prince. Morris Day is singing how this is a man that fulfills your every dream, fulfills your every wish. It is a 90s love affair, so equating this idea of this extreme wealth, this ability to give a woman in this instance everything she wishes, but representing this idea of Donald Trump as the way to do that, being that rich, right? Yeah. You said something earlier that I wanted to call back to about Donald Trump that relates to Donald Trump Black Version. You mentioned Dynasty. And I think what's really interesting is when you listen to Donald Trump Black Version, right? The first thing that popped into my head was this vision of Dynasty and Dallas, all of these very opulent TV shows that we used to watch on television. So you got the saxophones, solos, and all of that juxtaposed to this idea of this extreme wealth, capitalism, the ability for a man to give a woman everything is what a woman really wants, right? And I think the setting of that up sets us up for where we are today. And I just thought it was an interesting moment in time that Prince would write this song. It ended up coming out on Pandemonium, the Times 1990 album, because Corporate World never came out. So I think this is one of 3 songs that got saved from that recording project. But yeah, Prince wrote a song called Donald Trump Black Version that Morris Day sings.
So I want to say this. I don't want anyone listening to this episode to think that J. Ray and I, Sir Daniel, are laying this country's problems on the feet of Black people.
No.
We are not saying that at all. What we are saying is that what art does reflect people's reality. Art actually reflects what you take in on a daily basis. What there's this saying in the Bible, what you become, what you behold. And a lot of us were beholding to what the media was presenting to us as wealth, as opulence, as the barometer of what success in this country looks like. I cannot say how groundbreaking and how much foresight the documentary Paris is Burning has, because Paris is Burning does such an excellent job. It's not just about ballroom culture. It's really a fantastic look at New York in the 80s, but what also becomes a more global problem of how the perception of wealth can lead to people doing anything to attain that wealth because you covet what you see on a daily basis. And if I'm seeing in magazines and television shows that my life isn't worth anything
Yep.
unless I become that, unless I have possessions that equal to or are greater to than this man right here, then you start to build this story in your head that either my life is worthless and I'm just going to live it like it's worthless and allow whatever circumstances, whatever things to take me out of my head to numb the pain of that worthlessness. I'm going to do that, or I am going to study and personify the things that appear to me to get you to that place.
Mm.
And so I feel, J. Ray, what we saw, especially in New York is the epicenter. That's why we keep talking
Yeah.
about it. New York was the epicenter of everything at that time, as it pertained to hip hop culture
Mm-hmm.
and what would become this global phenomenon of hip hop. And a lot of New Yorkers tended to. This was not only Trump, but this was also a time in New York where crime leaders, crime bosses
Mm-hmm.
were super popular as well, even among black people. And we know it is well documented that the relationship between black people and Italians back in New York in the 80s, in the mid to late 80s, was not the best relationship.
Yep.
However, there was still a romanticizing of mob bosses with Italian names, and all the movies that were coming out, like your Scarfaces, even though he was Cuban,
Right.
Scarface and the Godfather. Oh my God!
Yes.
So black people, we started to assimilate or have this or romanticize these mafioso types.
Yes.
That starts popping up in our music in the early 90s as well. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of your favorite MCs were becoming dons, mafiosos, crime bosses, boss of the bosses, all types of labels to personify this sophisticated mob boss, the
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated gentleman, but was also running things in the streets. And so the closest thing that a lot of us had to that was when a lot of people were in the drug game, in the crack game, and that's when you had a lot of crack kingpins come up and would liken themselves to the Italian crime mob bosses. And so those things start to show up in the music because, of course, you reflect what you talk about what you see every day, or who's running the streets back then. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be like that dude. The
Yeah.
rappers, again, we got to say, we've said this before on this podcast, the rappers really weren't the popular dudes yet.
No.
It was definitely the crime. It was definitely the crack king, the crack
Mm-hmm.
kingpin, the local drug dealer that had the really fat, tricked out Benz, the 850 with the kit, the knocking system, the gold medallions, the fresh Dapper Dan outfit. That's who was running things. That's who was paying for the parties. That's who really had the neighborhood on lock about what power looked like,
Yeah.
because they had money, and money in this country equates to power. And so we've always been chasing that J Ray in some form or another, but now here we have this art form that is going from party rocking MCs to now telling stories about the streets
Yep.
and telling stories about who's running the streets, and now dawning these personas of these mob bosses and people running the street. But who is the number one dude who stays clean? He's not really, back then we didn't really link him to any wrongdoing, but he's still moving like that. He's still got the clout. He's got his name on in gold on a building,
Yep.
and in New York. And if you grew up watching Richie Rich or Iron Man, Tony Stark's had his name on the building. Those things mean something to you. And it's funny I bring up Tony Stark's because in the early '90s we see the rise of a rap conglomeration by the name of Wu-Tang
Yep.
Clan. And one of the rising stars out of the Wu-Tang Clan just so happens to be Ghostface Killah and at his time partner Raekwon the
Raekwon.
Chef.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the personas that Ghostface Killah would take on is that of Tony Stark's.
Yep.
And so you start to see again this love and adoration for these figures in New York City because of the perceived power that they wielded, but because of the perceived amount of money that they had. And so what you are going to see in some of the music is that they're going to start name checking and making references to people that they feel personify wealth, power, and access. I still have that song on my phone. I listen to it on a regular.
Yeah.
It still knocks. Incarcerated Scarfaces, Raekwon
Mm-hmm.
featuring Ghostface. There it was. Who is the
Yeah.
Black Trump?
Can we? I'm so glad you mentioned this idea of the Black Trump, because I think that harkens back to the conversation that you were having earlier about the othering, like Black folks being made to feel like we have to be a Black version of this other thing that is outside of our culture.
Yes.
And that's one of the consistent things that showed up in hip hop in the 90s and in the early 2000s, is this idea that Black folks were aspiring to be the Black version of this rich white thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you becoming the Black version of that meant that your status within community was higher than everyone else's, right? And so that idea of the Black Trump permeates, right? It's not something that you could just say and is flippant. It's something that people start to internalize and believe.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of cultural cachet that travels outside of community and gives rise to a person like Donald Trump having even more power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a way that all of this, and we're talking about this here in the music, specifically Black music here, but this is consistent, I think, across culture, where Donald Trump becomes and the character of Trump, and oftentimes the person Trump, because showing up, but it's what Trump represents that becomes glorified. And I think that is a thing that stays with people. And that's why, going back to your earlier point, being careful about what we say, how we say it. And I also think we're in this time where we do have to take a step back and start reflecting on the way we platform people, right? I don't know that it needs to. No, it needs to be all the time. Like, we definitely have to critically think about these things. Like I was about to say, it doesn't have to be all the time,
No,
unless you're making a
absolutely.
party record and you're making a party record. But being critical, right? There will
Mm-hmm.
be folks that'll say, "Oh my God, y'all being so serious, y'all being so serious." But look what happened as a result of us not being serious.
India Ari is on tour right now. She's performing, and she has this thing where on the back of her, on a screen, she has it on a screen about the power of the tongue and
Yes.
how we have to be so careful about what we speak life into. As you to your point, look at who we are platforming now, or who
Mhm.
we are making our stars, who are we making celebrities. We're turning people that don't necessarily have any talent that they can point to, or or that are have any kind of a product that we can point to and say, oh, I need to have this. This is going to change my life. No, we basically are giving platform to people who, for whatever reason, we want to exploit their circumstances, exploit their lack of self awareness or capabilities, or their or the lack of capabilities that they have. We're exploiting those things, but we're also at the same time making them celebrities and
Mm-hmm.
giving and saying, painting them as the underdog, because we love that story here in America of the underdog who
Yeah.
fights his way to the top. But a lot of times that's not the case. We've started out in that, making him a celebrity by not only speaking his name on our records, but he starts to show up in our videos.
Yep.
He
Yep.
starts to show up in our music videos. He starts to show with which then tells people, "Oh, this guy is a character," and then that leads him to cameos on television shows.
Yep.
And
Narratives are
then
really important, y'all. Like
super important.
this all becomes part of the way that people's ideas shift or begin to accept things, because we start to accept things as like a
We
normal
accept.
way of
Mm-hmm.
things being, and where we have to be able to take that step back and be like, nah, none of it, like this isn't normal. You know what
This
I'm
isn't
saying?
normal. He showed up in our living rooms on a weekly basis on a television show. And so therefore it endeared him to certain people, and it made him again the barometer of what we should strive to be and who we should try to be in this country. And then we see our own people
Yep.
mimicking him.
Diddy did
Like
right after
in
that,
a
right?
Diddy,
Like work for Diddy
work
and
for Diddy, making the band, all of
mhm.
those things to show how bad you want to become and to personify this person, because the media has said this is what you need to be. This is who you need to emulate.
Yep. I want to there are, and we'll link in the description, because there's a lot of history as it relates to referencing of Trump in hip hop, in black
Mm-hmm.
music overall, but particularly in hip hop. But I do want to send some love, because it wasn't all flattering, right? Or it wasn't all praise. I just want to give some love to the Coop, Boots Riley, Pam the Functress. They were very clear about the way they referred to when Trump was mentioned in a song. It was often mentioned in a way that was critical of the history of what was happening, and keeping that in mind. So I just wanted to let folks know that there are other examples, and I'm just pulling that one up as an example. But we will include some links. OK Player has a great article about this. There's a couple good articles out there from like 2016 to 2018 about Trump and hip hop, but we definitely wanted to lift this up because we're in this moment in time where, if you're asking the question, how did we get here?
Mm-hmm.
What we are lifting up in this show is, here is one of the ways that we
Yes.
got here, and hip hop and our music and the way that these stories have come to us is one of those things. And we just have to hold to Sir Daniel's earlier point. We have to hold that and learn from it and figure out how to move differently, I think, in the future. And if there's one thing I want to leave with folks before we get out of here today is it's okay to be critical of what you take in, right?
Yes.
It is not, and it's okay to be critical of what's being given to you. So if you're thinking about your local radio stations and you have a problem with what's on that station, you need to call that station and be like, no, kids are listening at this hour, this is playing, and this is unacceptable music. You can say that. You know what I mean? And you can organize your community to respond to things like that, that we are deeming that, hey, this is unacceptable, don't play it. Because we do need to be mindful of how these things start to show up in our art because they create narratives and people make choices based on the narratives that they get. And I was surprised, honestly, Sir Daniel, when we began to research for this show. I'm glad we had the idea, but when we started to dig into it, I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea
Yeah.
of the Black Trump is a very clear idea that's been around for a minute.
Absolutely. And it was done on purpose.
Yep.
And yeah, I just want to piggyback and what everything you said about what we want to uplift in this moment in this episode is to just be mindful of what you take in.
Mm-hmm.
Just be mindful of, what you do have control of is how you set your algorithm. And the algorithm is not just about the app that's on your phone, but the algorithm of your mind, of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we also do is we're allowing a lot of how terrible everything is, allowing that to set the algorithm in our brain, because what we're saying is that, well, if everything's terrible, I'm just going to attract more terrible things, because
Yep.
that's the way your mind is operating, and you don't know it, but you're drawing those things to you. And so we all deserve a reset.
Mm.
We all deserve a reset in this moment. And the way that you start off a reset is that you have to acknowledge, okay, I've been taking in some bull. I've been really, and it's been for a very long time. I've helped perpetuate it. I need to stop.
Yeah.
And again, it starts with what you behold. You become changed by what you behold. I really do believe that. And so we're not preaching here, but we just want to make you aware of what's happening. And hopefully this is a light bulb moment, and just be real selective of who you let in and out of your minds at this in this moment of time.
Yo, second, I definitely second that, Sir Daniel. Thank you so much for y'all tuning in to today's episode of Q Points. If you can see our faces and hear our voices, subscribe wherever you are. If you enjoy Q Points, chances are folks in your lives may enjoy Q Points too. So go ahead and share the show with them, friends, family, colleagues. Make sure that they know what we are doing over here. Visit our website at qpoints.com. There you can watch our entire archive of episodes. There are tons of stuff to take in. You can also become a member, and we would love it if you became a member, because it helps to keep the lights on in Q Points land. That way you get to support the show, make sure that we keep having the opportunity to do this, but it's just not about us. You get a bunch of stuff. So if you like this, we got other stuff that is just for the members, and you should check it out. You can join on our website. Check us out on Substack. We have a lot of other content over there. And shop our store at store.qpoints.com, where you can get gear like Slow Jams Can Heal Us, as well as other stuff. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all.
Absolutely. And like I always say, in this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is J Ray, y'all.
And this has been Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. We will see you on the next go round, because we are the best. There's nothing, we are the absolute best. Nothing like us. Hands
Peace,
down.
y'all.
Bar none.
Bar none.
Bar none. We're the best.
Peace, y'all.
Peace, y'all.